Welcome to my discussion of Clemson University's new student dialogue program, which is required for freshmen and transfer students. In this incredibly bland, uninteresting, boring, mind-numbing, dull, but entertaining video, I will discuss several aspects and questions about my experience in the new student dialogue program here at Clemson as I was a freshman. First, we'll cover a little summary of the group, and if I believe my group held a true dialogue, and I'll explain why. I'll then move into discussing who the active voices of the group were, and then the more shy or reserved voices of the session. Of course, then I would have to reveal which of those I myself was in my group, so I'll talk about what role I believe I played in this new student dialogue with my Clemson peers. After I discuss myself, I will move into my opinions of the dialogue and why I think it is part of this course we call Library 100. And then we'll have question and answer time, in which I'll ask no questions but will provide many answers with my thoughts, observations, and incredible ideas for future new student dialoguers. Put your seatbelts on, children. This is not going to be a wild ride at all. I may as well title this video Williams-Brice Stadium, Stephen Garcia, or South Carolina Gamecock Athletics, because it's going to be an eyesore. Let the 5 minutes of boredom begin. Our first question is, do you feel your group achieved true dialogue? Why or why not? I don't believe this group actually achieved a true dialogue because several reasons. Sometimes we all talked or had input into the conversation, but for a majority of the session, there were never really a constant conversation. It seemed as if the leaders had to pull out every answer from the students as if they're in pain or something. I believe if there were more people who knew each other in the group, then it may have been more successful as far as dialogue or constant conversation goes. If the video that was in our session was presented at a different time, then there may have been more chance of dialogue as well. It seemed as if the group was finally getting kind of comfortable with each other, and then we watched a 20-minute video that kind of put everyone back into their shell like a hermit crab. Pretty convinced there are some people who didn't say a word to the group the whole entire time they're in the room. Our second question is, were there active voices in your dialogue? Please explain. There were probably about 10 voices that made most of the comments in our new student dialogue session. The active voices weren't exactly the loudest or constantly talking, but they just talked more than most of the other people. The active voices were more people who felt like if they talked, then the group would be done faster and they could get on with their lives, it seems like. Some of them seemed to be talking just because they are genuinely interested in what was happening in the dialogue, but the majority of the active voices in our group seemed to just want to get done with the session. Our third question is, were there more reserved voices in your dialogue? Please explain. I would have to say there are definitely some more reserved voices in our new student dialogue. If anything, there are more reserved voices than there were active voices, but is that not what expected in an activity like this? I believe some people didn't exactly want to talk, but every now and then they felt like the topic was so strong or moving that they just had to say something or make a comment. I think everyone kind of started off reserved in the activity, but then some people just figured out the time would go faster or be a little more entertaining if they talked or if they got everyone talking. So instead of everyone just looking around awkwardly, they started talking to get everyone else to talk or just to pass the time. The fourth question we have is, what role did you play in your group and why? In our group, I think I was probably between the reserved and the active level of participation as far as the talking or conversation goes. And I made a comment every now and then, and that was for the big group, but not really a big contributor. And I had a few comments on several occasions that kind of got the whole group started, or just to lighten the mood, maybe some humor every now and then. I was mainly a listener as far as the whole group goes. And then sometimes I would agree with someone or help reinforce a concept or an idea that they had just presented to the group. But at one point in the session, we split off into small groups And when we split off into our small groups, I was probably the leader of that, and I got the group rolling, talking about our task and what we had to accomplish. And I got the group talking and came up with an effective way to decide who had to present their ideas. Like, we all worked as one, made a list, and then we knew one person would have to present, so I came up with a good way for us to decide who was going to present since none of us wanted to. Our fifth question is, why do you think the dialogue is a component of Library 100? Do you see the dialogue as a useful tool in your university experience? Library 100 is a very interesting course and probably one of the more challenging courses, but it's challenging because you have to make yourself go to the new student dialogue, and mine was on a Friday night when there was a basketball game, so I wasn't too excited. You also have to complete all the follow-up tasks, and that's time consuming, and to make the student think about what they had done in the dialogue. But the dialogue is a component of Library 100 for several reasons. It seemed as if the leaders of the discussion were experienced students at Clemson and are trying to open their freshman eyes to issues they believe were negatively affecting our university, the students, and its learning. It also helps the students learn some technological resources as well as time management and task balancing. If the Library 100 course is only one or two tasks, then students wouldn't have to worry about getting them all done. But since it's three or four more complex tasks, then they require thinking in several steps, and the students are forced to balance their time between fun activities, other classes, and Library 100 tasks to make sure they get everything done in a timely manner to meet the deadlines. Any additional thoughts and observations? I think they could be done at another time, possibly with the welcome groups at orientation, maybe, or when you first get to Clemson. Possibly organized by floor, maybe, or a setting where the people are more familiar with each other. But the leaders did a very good job of dealing with the students, and they knew that we didn't really want to be there, so they knew how to break up the continuity of the session. And they had 3 or 4 worksheets, so they did a good job of breaking it up and not just making it one long session of 2 hours of talking. And maybe use smaller groups if at all possible. Most people will talk more the less people there are. So they did a good job making it interesting though. It's more of a surprise than we all thought, most likely. For most of the kids, they thought it was going to be dumb and we'd all just sit there. But it ended up being a pretty well run operation. The leaders seemed experienced and enthusiastic. And the follow-up work that corresponds with the program was meaningful and reinforced ideas from the session pretty well.